Welcome to Michelangelo's David at the Galleria dell'Accademia here in Florence, Venezia. It is one of the most important sculptures in all of world history. Let me show it to you here at the wonderful city of beautiful architecture and the birth of the Renaissance. I'm Ariel, this is Urbanist, and let me know where you're watching from. So here's one of the main sculptures by Michelangelo, a work in progress. And here you can see what actually went into making the David. You can see the chisel marks there on the top. You can see how the face is not fully polished yet. The body is just starting to be polished, so you still see some ridges, even though with any sculpture you'll always see at least some ridges. And the hands are still a fully work in progress, but you can start seeing the outline. This is how a sculpture was made. So you can just imagine David by Michelangelo coming out from a piece of marble that was twice as bigger. And here's another one. And these sculptures were meant for the tomb of Julius II, Pope. That is still there in San Pietro de Vicoli in Rome, where you can see the huge statue of Moses, which was completed by Michelangelo, but the other ones weren't. And this is towards the end of his life. So how did Michelangelo get the proportions of David so damn correct? Well, first, David is a little bit off proportion, but it's for a very good reason. The statue originally was supposed to stand all the way on top of a Duomo, the main cathedral of Florence, many feet high, so about 100 feet high, around there. However, when it was originally unveiled, people were so deeply enamored with it that they decided to put it on ground level, right in front of the Palazzo Vecchio, which we visited yesterday, and we're going to visit it soon again. Thus, because it was intended to be built on top of a gigantic cathedral, it was meant to be seen from far away. And that's why there's a slight kind of misproportions. The head is a bit bigger, and the hands are much bigger. Some people attribute the hands being bigger because they're the hands of God, but also because he wanted to provide a better perspective from down below. So here's how it will look like atop of El Duomo, which is the Cathedral of Santa Maria de Fiori, which means the St. Mary of the Flowers, which I'll show you also soon. And this is a fiberglass replica that was placed up there to show the original intention. And as you can see, it kind of looks a little bit better, more proportioned from down below. Here's another. There's a Pieta by Michelangelo. Janice, thank you so much for the 50 stars. Hello, Noreen. Hello, Wendy. Hello, Trisha. Hello, everyone. Hello, Veronica. Hello, Ronald. Wow, I can't get over how gorgeous this is. Ooh, here we got Bartolini. So Michelangelo always thought himself to be not so good looking. And I'm going to do the live video mostly through here. He always thought himself to be not so good looking. A lot of people said that he looked like a beggar. He had, I think, a scar on his face. He was very scraggly in terms of his hair. So here I found a portrait of Michelangelo. It doesn't look so bad. Also, when they made portraits of famous figures many hundreds of years ago, they tend to idealize them as well. But Michelangelo wanted to make up for his so-called inadequacies. You be the judge if Michelangelo was ugly or not. In order to make the idealized male figure, to make him so good looking that the David will be what men aspire to be. It's 17 feet tall, so no man can aspire to be 17 feet tall, but it was because the huge slab of marble that they had, no one can carve it for almost 100 years. People have tried. It was so narrow and so tall that one sculptor attempted to carve it and only made a gigantic hole at the bottom. Well, Michelangelo decided to take the opportunity. Thus, he decided to make a very slender David, looking like he's in his 20s. Now, David looks like he's ready for action. Most Davids made by Donatello, there's a few major sculptures. You also see a David by Caravaggio in La Galleria Borghese in Rome. They all show David with the severed head of Goliath. He already won in most of those depictions. But this one, David is before his battle with Goliath. So he hasn't fought Goliath yet. And he's looking towards his enemy, about to get ready, sizing him up. And that's why you see him kind of in mid-action over here. Okay, everyone, viewer discretion is advised, because there is no fig leaf. And now I'm gonna get a little bit specific anatomically, because he is uncircumcised. Why is this Old Testament hero, of course, being of the Jewish faith, because he was an Israelite fighting against a Philistine, which was Goliath, the big giant. Why is he uncircumcised? Well, it's because circumcision was actually outlawed a few hundred years before Michelangelo. So they were maintaining Christian ideals and not Old Testament ideals. Also, another thing is, for such a tall statue, and for such an idealized male figure, he's a bit small. At least what the perspective of people looking at it would think. And the reason for that is also because he's maintaining Christian ideals from the Renaissance. He is a man of modesty. He's a man who can control his urges, as opposed to the satyrs of ancient Greece, which we learned about at the theater of Dionysus, who are men who rampantly run around and frolic with whoever they may want to frolic with. As Phil says, it must be cold. Yeah, it must be cold, indeed. So how did Michelangelo know how to make such a authentic human body? Well, it's because him and his his contemporary, Leonardo da Vinci, these were two men during the Renaissance who did something very weird. They spent most of their nights hanging out with dead bodies. Yeah, they actually had cadavers. They had to be very secret about it because if anyone found out, people would think they would be weird, and also maybe doing some type of dark arts or some pagan ritual. But no, they weren't doing some type of pagan ritual. They were just studying the anatomy of these bodies in close and immense detail. So Michelangelo, sculptor by night and autopsy investigator by night. Executive, hey Ariel, thank you so much for saying 100 stars. You know what they say with men with big hands, says Jack. Well, it doesn't apply here. They were geniuses, says Janice. They indeed were. We're gonna do a run around through. So I just come out to show you here from this perspective first. So Michelangelo was younger than Leonardo, yeah. Leonardo really got famous in his later life, but Michelangelo became a superstar in his 20s. He ended up sculpting this when he was a mere 26 years old. He was already a superstar because he actually sculpted the Pieta in the Vatican at 24 years old. And this was sculpted in 1504. And Roland says, sure, he was an autopsy investigator. And Bella says he's very well endowed. Not. Oh, look at that. It's so cool. So another thing is he's actually in what's called contrapose. And contrapose is a very normal way of standing. Hey Ariel, thank you so much for the $10 super chat, appreciate it. He's in a contrapose, which is kind of a way of standing. I wish I could show you a full body image, but I can't, of myself. I do it naturally every time I'm like doing a live stream and standing still. And this was in a way first to adjust for the block of marble, which was not ideal for a big burly pose like Hercules or like Ajax or Achilles and other sculptures. They're just gigantic men. But no, he had to do a very slender kind of figure, and also had to be kind of an S curve. How long have you been in Italy, Wayne? 3 weeks at this point. Ariel, thank you so much for the $10 super chat, I appreciate it. I didn't realize the statue was so tall. Yeah, it was supposed to stand on a gigantic cathedral. If you want to see a better perspective of the cathedral, which I'm mentioning, let me show you a photo. It was supposed to stand on top of this. Yeah. Unfortunately, Michelangelo's David would have been looking tiny compared to the massiveness of the Florence Cathedral. Santa Maria de Fiori. Wendy says, stunning, I love all of them. Oh, so cool. Yeah, we got a lot of people here. I'm going to show you a little bit more of the gallery. So beautiful. The right hand looks of looks big because of that angle. Yeah, the right hand is definitely bigger. Yeah, I'll zoom in on the right hand. Yep, definitely bigger. But you can see the veins are popping out, and that's a natural thing that happens, you know. When you are tense, your veins start getting oxygenated. Happens to me after a very long day of live streaming. So it's kind of a mixture of relaxed and tense, because his other hand is much more relaxed. He's about to bash Goliath's head in. So there's another interesting thing about this statue. It's the actual myth of David versus Goliath, or story of David versus Goliath. A lot of people interpret the story as it being an underdog winning against a very gigantic enemy, larger than life. So a lot of people use David and Goliath as a story of prevailing against all the odds. But I read this amazing book called David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. And he offered an interpretation that has been told throughout the millennia, but isn't so popular because people like the underdog story. The thing is, David was an expert slingshotter. So he had to face this Philistine, the Goliath, who was a huge man and heavily armored. Of course, his height varies according to the story when it's told. He could have been 7 feet tall, he could have been 8 feet tall, he could have been an actual giant, maybe more than that. But he was in heavy armor. He was an infantryman. He was a guy on the front lines, Goliath. But this guy, he was a slingshotter. And you might think to yourself, oh, of course, this guy will never have a chance against Goliath. But at that time, and for many hundred years later, the slingshotter actually had a big advantage. They were feared in most armies because of their precision with slinging that rock. And that rock would have very high precision that it could debilitate even the strongest of men. And this was not unknown back then in ancient times. So who was the true underdog? Was it David? Or was it really Goliath? Because there's another thing. Goliath was big. He was heavily armored. And also Goliath was a giant. So he may have suffered from giganticism, which unfortunately affects many people's eyesight. People who tend to be very giant tend to have poor eyesight. Maybe they knew that. Maybe this was not unknown to them. Maybe they didn't actually fear Goliath. Maybe David was always someone who would prevail. And the book Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath, actually is a very good one because he kind of uses this analogy with companies, where you think a tiny company has no chance of beating a bigger one. But maybe they're always in the right position at the right time, in the right circumstances to do exactly that. And it's happened over and over and over in history, also with countries. How did a tiny little island like Britain end up becoming a massive super world power? Or a country started by a few farmers and legislators, lawyers, end up becoming a gigantic superpower like the United States of America. Why? Well, maybe the story of David Goliath actually shows that the underdog really isn't the underdog. Maybe it's the perfect person to take control. In many of these situations, when someone gets too big, too burly, and loses the sight of things. There's always security people in museums. Yeah, there's a lot of security people here. All right, I'm gonna show you a little bit around. Bear with me. I'm gonna show you that. So this area right here used to be gilded in gold. His slingshot. And David was no bum because he was known as one of the best sharpshooters among the Israelites. He had a very good foothold on his skills. And he was always ahead of the competition. So you could just imagine this being gilded in gold when it was originally unveiled. Wow, that's amazing. Bella says his backside is better than his front. His hands are out of proportion. His body, yeah, and it's on purpose. Your calves are bigger, says Paul. in that regard, yes, I think that's accurate. Indeed, it is. He was a sharpshooter. He was not a marathon walker. He was a sharpshooter, not a live streamer. So yeah. Slug says he had a very close shave. Well, David is supposed to be very young. He was supposed to be, I think, in his teens. So he was also very much younger than Goliath. But Michelangelo decided to make him in his 20s. Do we have to leave him, says Wendy? We do. We have to now go to these beautiful female figures. David, I know, is the replica at the Caesar's Palaces, LAC, which is a pretty good replica as well. A lot of people talk trash about Las Vegas, but they're pretty good at copying things. He's too thick for a teen, says James Black. Yeah. David's supposed to be in his teens, but Michelangelo depicted him in his 20s. Hey, Miss Lob! Oh, what craze are you referring to? Sorry, I couldn't read too many of the comments. dress me up, David, fridge magnets. No, Miss Love, no. I don't remember that craze. Remember, I'm a very, very young age of 19 years old. Shh, don't tell anyone. This is Daphne and Chloe. These tours are wonderful, says Elaine. I'm glad you're enjoying it. What are you looking at? Other sculptures. I mean, I could be a David all day, but I think 20 minutes suffices for David. At least for a video. But if you could visit yourself, you could be here all day. I think within reason. Teens peanuts on a 20s body, says Paul. You have to realize that unlike female anatomy, which was shown a little bit more accurately in the Renaissance, male anatomy isn't going to be shown either accurately, either they exaggerate, like the ancient Greek pagans, or they go way too on the lower spectrum or hide it completely, like the Christian sculptures. So, yeah. Male anatomy was actually more misrepresented, I think, than even in modern times, where it's now the reverse. Female anatomy is usually kind of glorified and exaggerated, while male anatomy, you know, it varies. Christine, do I have a fresh new cut, a fresh new shave, and a new shirt? Indeed I do, Christine. Indeed I do. What was the charge for the visit? I forgot right now. I think I paid it 18 euro. Anyone can confirm. Let me show you more of the museum one more time, David. Michelangelo even sculpted into his eyes, making them more sunken in, so the light can catch it, and it makes it look like real human eyes. You can see that's disintegrating just a little bit, but still in almost perfect condition. Thumbnail. It was outdoors until 1870 something, 1873, 1874. So in the 1800s is when they put it away from the Palazzo Vecchio. Of course, it might have alternated back and forth. Catherine says, "Oh, David has nail fungus." Yeah, maybe the marble version of nail fungus. Nail fungus, yeah. How the F can they carve something to such level of detail? So this is actually a good representation. You see right here, looks like almost the guy is escaping from the marble. According to Michelangelo, he did not sculpt something; he released it. So Michelangelo felt like he was releasing the figure from the piece of marble. So to him, each piece of marble was meant for a different figure that he did not choose. Wasn't it shameful for that time to create something so erotically explicit? James, great question. No. Why? We're in Florence. Florence, you can think of it as New York in the height of America becoming big, in the 1800s. Other places in Italy were very Christian. The people states, like Rome, ruled by the Pope. And in northern Italy, of course, a little bit more poor at the time, not so rich yet. And then Naples was a monarch. But Florence was run by businessmen, by guilds, people who were more interested in commerce, similar to New York, as opposed to the rest of the U.S. in the 1800s, early 1800s, where most of the U.S. was farms. There were up north in the Northeast, there was a lot of Puritans. In New York, it was run by commerce, and that's why New York had a flourishing of the arts and a flourishing of culture, media, and entertainment. Same thing here in Florence. Florence had a flourishing of the arts, culture, and entertainment because they were going back and bringing to light again old pagan beliefs, the writings of ancient Greek philosophers, which they end up getting access from by the Greeks who fled the Turkish invasions of the Eastern Roman Empire. So no one expects the Ottomans. So those Greeks that left the Eastern Roman Empire fled, and they're coming here to Italy, various parts, including Florence, and they brought with them the texts of the ancient philosophers, which would not have been looked so kindly enough in Rome. And I think that's why sculpture, art, literature wasn't so clamped down and oppressed as other parts in Europe. But also, that didn't mean that Michelangelo or Dante Alighieri or Machiavelli, or all these wonderful artists and theorists and scientists of the Renaissance were actually looked kind upon. That didn't mean that they had a good relationship with Florence. The relationship actually was a bit more complicated. For example, Michelangelo did not return to Florence for the last few decades of his life. He just stayed in Rome. He was basically in exile. Same thing with Dante Alighieri, basically in exile. So yeah, it was complicated, but that's why you have these sculptures that are what would be seen as explicit according to more old school Christian thinking, or new school, because there's many parts in the world right now where it's more Protestant, and Protestantism does not look kind upon the nude figure. Brenda says, unless it is a beard. Yes, don't wear a beard, otherwise you'll be exiled from ancient Christianity or ancient Rome. All right, let's go to the exhibit. Victoria, esos angelitos se parecen más a diablitos. Victoria says those angels appear more like devils. Desde los tiempos antiguos, Los ángeles tenían unas figuras que no tenían un cuerpo. Ellos básicamente eran cabezas con alas. Y a veces con 4 a 6 alas. So, in ancient times, angels were never depicted really with a body. Like we have modern depictions of angels today, like Cupid. But instead they were just disembodied heads with wings. Sometimes 2 to 6 wings or more. Renee, yeah, the angels always had a odd look to them. This is more kind of our classical interpretation of angels, or not classical, but medieval ages and forward. So remember, these guys were reintroducing pre-Middle Ages Christian ideology. So that's why some of these painters did show angels, how they look classically. Are these Giotto? No, I don't think these are Giotto. I think he might be more in the Uffizi gallery. Imagine waking to that in your bedroom. Imagine it flying right above your head. Will you be scared, or will you feel the beauty of grace? Hey, Panachotas, nice to see you. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, really great paintings. I love this one. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. That was a little taste of La Galleria Accademia here in Florence, Firenze. And this was the statue of David. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back live at 5 p.m. Italy time, which is 11 a.m. New York City time, 4 p.m. London time. Thank you so much for tuning in. How can you take a baby to a museum? I don't know. This was the statue of David, ladies and gentlemen. Michelangelo. Will we see any other sculpture as beautiful as this one? Who knows? I'm Ariel, this is Urbanist. Keep doing awesome, and always keep on exploring. Arrivederci, amici. Bye-bye.